Hello, shalom, everybody, and welcome to the fourth episode of Exploring the Motherland. I am your host, Garth. This is Exploring the Motherland with Garth. I'm your host, Garth, and I'm here to tell you that Exploring the Motherland will continue to push and promote the mission of Quest Unite Africa, as you all know. And some of you may know the mission of Quest Unite Africa, but I am going to reiterate it for those who haven't been acquainted with it, and I will continue to promote it and say it till I'm blue in the face. Quest Unite Africa is a non-profit charity that sole purpose is to promote economic development and critical infrastructure for the benefit of Africa and the African diaspora. We achieve this mission through four main initiatives: business, medical, cultural engagement, and technological innovation. But Quest Unite Africa, Exploring the Motherland will not only talk about the mission of Quest Unite Africa, we are going to talk about news developments, news articles that directly correlate to our mission, and we will bring relevance, and we will seamlessly here bring the message of Quest Unite Africa and how it relates to the continent and what we can do to help. So I know you all are getting tired of listening to me and you came here to get the news. That's what I will provide with you. And let's start. First story: Nigeria's president calls for end to protests against economic hardship. We will listen to these two news clips and then I will give some discussion, and then you could chime in, give feedback, and we will have some fun. Let's start.
Nigeria's leader called for an end to protests against a cost of living crisis, demonstrations which have left several people dead in clashes with police. Sunday's comments were President Bola Tinubu's first since protesters took to the streets last week.
I want to assure you that our government is committed to listening and addressing the concerns of our citizens. But we must not let violence and destruction tear our nation apart.
Amnesty International has said at least 13 people were killed in clashes with security forces on the first day of protests on Thursday. Police, however, deny using excessive force and say only 7 people had died as of Saturday, including those caused by an explosive device, and another where a person was shot by a guard when protesters looted a shop. Protester Ireo Oluwafemi said the president's words are inconsequential.
We are going nowhere!
We are going nowhere. What the president said this morning means nothing. It means nothing.
Nigerians have been protesting against economic hardship and bad governance and call for a cut in petrol prices and electricity tariffs, among several other demands. Protesters are angry with President Tinubu's economic reforms, which have led to rampant inflation. However, Tinubu has defended his reforms, which included reducing subsidies and devaluing the naira, as essential to correcting prior economic mismanagement.
In Nigeria, President Bola Tinubu has asked protesters to suspend their movement following days of violent rallies. Demonstrators want the government to reinstate fuel subsidies to help reduce the rising cost of living and implement judicial reforms. Tinubu says he's introduced new policies, but they will take time to improve conditions. Dozens of people have been arrested and several killed since the protest began on Thursday.
I understand the pain and the frustration that drive these protests. And I want to assure you that our government is committed to listening and addressing the concerns of our citizens. But we must not let violence and destruction tear our nation apart. Let nobody misinform and miseducate you about your country or tell you that your government does not care about you. Although there have been many dashed hopes in the past, we are in a new era of renewed hope.
Well, Ahmed Idris is live for us in Nigeria's commercial hub, Lagos. Did the president meet the demands of the protesters?
Well, basically, in his speech, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu spoke about the economic reforms his government is undertaking and the results they are having. But what I can tell you is that he did not address the fundamental demands of the protesters, which is the reversal of the fuel subsidy, as well as the reversal of hikes in tariffs for electricity and the privatization of self-government organizations that led to the current state of affairs in the country. The president insisted that very soon that people will start seeing the result of these economic reforms in the country. But people are really, really desperate for relief, and that is why they are going to continue to demand for quicker reform, quicker action, government action, so as to ease the pain. They talk about being hungry. They talk about insecurity. They talk about the general economic outlook of the country, which is, according to protest organizers, is bleak at the moment. So right now, the protest organizers have been meeting since yesterday, and we expect them to come out with a statement after the president's address. But what we're seeing here at the main master point here in Ojota, this is the few demonstrators who have gathered for today's activities here at Ojota, the designated post of the protesters. We are not sure whether or not this will build up, but I can tell you the security presence here is 10 to 1 to the number of protesters gathered at this venue.
Okay, obviously the president said that he's not going to reinstate petrol subsidies at this stage. What's likely to be the reaction? Are we going to see more whole-scale protests against this?
Well, the protests have quietened down in many parts of the country. In Lagos here, there used to be 3 designated locations for the protest. But over time, we've seen these reduced to 1. And this is what we're seeing this morning here in Ojota, which is the main protest ground for the demonstrators here in Lagos State. In other states, where curfews have been imposed, things have quietened down a little bit. But people are watching closely what's happening here in Lagos and the reaction that will come after the president's address. It's too early to say what the reaction will be, because many people have been at home listening to what President Bola Ahmed Tinubu was saying in his nationwide address. And another place to look out for is the capital, Abuja, where even yesterday there were activities there, like people demanding action. And the day before we saw the continuation of violence there, tear gas being lobbed at protesters in the Federal Capital Territory. We don't know how this will develop, but definitely we expect the response of the protest organizers anytime from now.
Okay, thanks so much. We'll keep a very close eye on how things play out there. That's Ahmed Idris for us in Lagos.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from.
Okay, so basically, we see what's going on in Nigeria. The president is continuing to give empty promises for, better economic policies, one being cutting petrol prices and giving people created state oil company jobs and doubling the minimum wage. Last week, if you were here, those were the initiatives that the president gave the people of Nigeria. But clearly, it hasn't done anything, because the president hasn't done anything to ingratiate himself with the people or create a relationship. And that word relationship here at Quest Unite Africa is very, very important to us. We want to create a relationship where we meet the needs of our people here in the African diaspora and in Africa. So I see here through 2 initiatives mainly how we could help the people of Nigeria. I think through business and technological innovation, because their main problem is that the president hasn't done anything to um, alleviate any type of alleviate energy prices and the cost of living as a whole, because everything is incumbent upon your energy source. Everything runs on your energy. So if the people are having a hard time even having electricity in their own homes, they're already at a disadvantage. They can't even, work or do anything because the cost of living is so high. So I believe at Quest Unite Africa, we could get engineers or electricians or people who have direct knowledge in energy consumption and how energy is fluctuated throughout an electrical grid, and what we could do to alleviate their electrical grid in Nigeria, even using alternative sources of energy such as solar power. I remember in Africa, solar kiosks are a new thing. Well, I'm not going to say a new thing. That's a new technological innovation that's helped keep the strain off of the electrical grid in some countries. But here you just see how people are fed up and angry with the president and the governance of the country as a whole. This is what happens when you don't make the effort to understand what your citizens want or make that relationship to put their needs first. He's basically just reiterating things that his Western overlords told him to say to keep the country from spiraling out of control, which it is going to. I mean, it's just going to get worse because he isn't doing anything. He's just appeasing the people. They don't understand. I mean, he doesn't. No, they understand that he's just appeasing them. You saw the one sister in the clip saying what the president's saying means nothing. She knows that he's just a, a puppet of the West, and that they need to do something in order to be heard, because now it's just gotten worse. And we'll also see another story I have in Kenya. It's just all this whole rise of demanding more from the government and from the people who are supposed to represent you has overtaken the continent in Africa, and it's just going to grow. And I see here how we can help our people with the fallout and give them knowledge through consultation of different businesses here in America, how we could consult on how to use energy or how to create different energy sources to help alleviate their reliance on the government, because the government isn't doing anything to give them an alternative energy source that doesn't completely stifle their funds. All right. And the next story, South Africa to implement national health insurance bill despite resistance.
South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has vowed to move ahead with the implementation of the National Health Insurance Bill despite strong opposition from within and outside the government. He signed the controversial bill just before his African National Congress party lost its parliamentary majority in the May elections. The NHI aims to provide universal healthcare coverage for all through a major overhaul of the country's two-tier system. It will gradually limit the role of private healthcare insurance, which fewer than 16% of South Africans have. Supporters see the bill as a positive change, which will reverse inequalities dating back to the apartheid era. Political parties opposed to the NHI, who've joined the new government of national unity, together with other stakeholders, however, say the proposed funding model will not work. Speaking on the final day of the ANC policy meeting on Tuesday, Health Minister Aaron Motsoaledi said that sections of the bill will be implemented immediately. But he said other parts would be rolled out over years and acknowledged there could be delays due to legal challenges.
All right, so this is a step in the right direction, I believe, to give the people of South Africa universal health care. This is kind of reminds me of Obamacare. I'm not going to make any direct correlations on how Obamacare was received here or how it was implemented, but it's just kind of reminds me of how here in the U.S. they tried to improve our public health infrastructure and all the challenges that came. And as they were saying, I believe a lot of challenge. This bill will have challenges because, for one, South Africa is divided on. They have cultural differences in the population. They mentioned apartheid, so there is going to be, for a lack of a better term, losers and winners in this deal or in this initiative. But there's more winners than losers, I believe, if this is implemented correctly, because there is a concern for corruption and misallocation of funds. That's already, a given. But at the same time, there is going to be a lot of challenges to meet the demand of universal public health care for, or national health insurance for all, because that means that the whole system, the whole medical system in South Africa is going to undergo change, which in part will cause a lot of upheaval and a lot of lack of resources and even lack of supplies, because now the country is completely changing its focus and its goals towards public health care. And, private insurance is uh, a luxury, or they've made it a luxury here in the States, because when you have private insurance, you have more autonomy on choosing where you get your care from and who you get your care from. Whereas if you are, on the lower income side, you just are beholden to whoever is accepting the local or state insurance. So I believe here Quest Unite Africa is relevant because we make it a point in our medical initiative to help supply countries that are in need of help with their public and their not just public health infrastructure, just their health infrastructure as a whole. And how we could help South Africa is just helping them with just donations of medical supplies, because I believe there could be a strain on medical supplies when you are changing your health system. There may not be enough of supplies for everyone, but we could create initiatives where we give donations to help the public health infrastructure of South Africa. Also, I believe we can also, if there are constraints on their workforce, because there will be more doctors, there will be more doctors needed to help with the influx of new patients and new care providers. So we could create an initiative through our medical doctors that help either train or just help, with the workload of rolling out a national health insurance bill, which encompasses new health parameters and new health laws and new healthcare challenges. Also, just being able to provide infrastructure that will be able to help house those new patients or the patients that are getting treated that never received treatment before. There would probably need some type of healthcare facility management, upkeep, making sure everything is up to standard and it is equal, and there's no disparity between the healthcare of someone who has private insurance and the person who has public health insurance. But that's a challenge in and of itself, and that's not even the scope of just the health insurance in and of itself, because the government decides who, what, where, and who gets different resources. So that is a challenge in and of itself. But I believe that this national health insurance is a good thing if implemented correctly. All right, and the next story: Kenya police fire tear gas on anti-government demonstrators in Nairobi. Yeah, Kenya is on fire and continues to be on fire, but let's let the news clips give more detail.
Kenyan President William Ruto is facing the biggest crisis of his 2 years in office. Hundreds of protesters have gathered in the capital, Nairobi, yet again to call for his resignation. Police have fired tear gas at the crowds and they've made several arrests. The unrest began in June with rallies against a controversial finance bill that would have raised taxes. Ruto deployed the army and the crackdown killed at least 60 people. Finally, in response to protesters' demands, Ruto scrapped the bill and reshuffled his cabinet. But many Kenyans are calling for justice for the activists killed and an end to what they say is endemic government corruption. Well, for more on this, we're going to talk to Malcolm Webb. He's joining us now from Nairobi. Malcolm, over the last couple of hours or so, we've been seeing very intense pictures coming out of Nairobi. Just talk us through what's been happening.
Well, what started with dozens of protesters grew in number to probably a couple of hundred at least, trying to gather just in this area and within 2 or 3 blocks surrounding here. But every time they've tried to gather, the police have broken them up with tear gas. If we take a look down this street, it's absolutely littered with shattered tear gas canisters. They've been firing them again and again at even the smallest numbers of protesters, but the protesters nonetheless managed to gather into a group of, a much more significant group just in the last half hour or so, before, again, yet more volleys of tear gas have pushed them into the side streets. But they're still here, still not far away. We can still see a few of them. You can also see police trucks, more police trucks arriving full of riot police, suggesting that what the police hope to do now is completely clear these streets. The demonstrators are angry following President William Ruto's appointment of a new cabinet earlier today, except some of the ministers aren't new. That's part of the problem. He fired almost his entire cabinet in response to these demonstrations, and then re-appointed several of his own ministers, and also included 3 politicians from the political opposition. Now, the political opposition haven't led these protests. They haven't really been involved, and it's widely seen as a view to try and secure his political position. Politics in Kenya is known for its endemic corruption. Those in the most senior positions tend to grow extremely wealthy, and cutting the political opposition into government is widely seen as a way of preventing a backlash against William Ruto and his government in Parliament. Protesters have been calling for President Ruto to go. One of the few ways in which that would be possible would be if he was impeached by Parliament. But of course, if both the opposition and the ruling party are towing his line, then that's very hard to imagine that happening. Elections aren't due here for another 3 years. Demonstrators, as you mentioned, also been calling for justice for the dozens of people killed, and also the dozens of people who've been abducted or gone missing. Many have been say that they've been interrogated and released. Others, a handful of others, have been found later dead, and some others are still missing. Police deny extrajudicial killings. But rights groups say that the state is responsible for this and that it's a crackdown on the attempt by mainly young Kenyans to express their discontent with their government.
Markham, we were talking earlier that this began back in June. Is there any indication that you have about whether or not the protests are continuing with the same intensity, or is there a change in the number of people or the types of people who are taking to the streets these days?
We're seeing far fewer people than on the busiest days, which well, it was on the 25th of June, which was the third demonstration, that protesters entered Parliament. Police and security forces responded, shooting dozens of them. About 24 people died that day, and that further angered the crowd. Now, it was in the days following that President William Ruto withdrew the controversial finance bill, which was the government's plan to raise taxes for the second year in a row, but at a time when many Kenyans are struggling with the cost of living, real wages have stagnated for years, and as well as the endemic corruption, also the extraordinary displays of personal private wealth by politicians become normal. Politicians showing off their helicopters or their watches worth tens of thousands of dollars. People started pointing these things out on social media. The following grew, the anger grew, and then the numbers on the streets absolutely exploded at the end of June. And since then, we've seen on the days when protests are planned, police blocking some of the main roads leading into the city so that people walking in from some of the low-income areas on the periphery aren't allowed to pass. We've also seen here, as we have today, police trying to stop any demonstration from happening before it even starts by tear gassing even the smallest groups of protesters.
Yeah, Malcolm, we're getting a sense of the size of the security forces' presence on the streets. Just as you're talking, it's obviously we've been watching what you've been showing to us, and we can see them behind you. For now, Malcolm Webb in Nairobi, thank you very much indeed.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.
More protests in the Kenyan capital as businesses in Nairobi remain closed and demonstrators clashed with the police on Thursday. Building on the concessions they won in weeks of demonstrations, people are calling on President William Ruto to resign. Following the recent protests, he fired his entire cabinet and included opposition members in what he called a broad-based government. But it appears that, for some, this was not enough.
I am protesting for the people we've lost during the march who are asking the government for accountability. I am protesting for the people who have missed out on so many opportunities because of broken systems. I am protesting.
Thursday's clashes came as Ruto's new cabinet was sworn in. Protesters are calling for far-reaching reforms to tackle corruption and for an improvement in service delivery. But other major towns and cities that took part in earlier demonstrations appear to have remained calm. Ruto has condemned the protests, urging Kenyans to stay away from them and saying that those who want change can vote him out in the 2027 elections.
You hear that guy? Vote him out. How can you vote out a corrupt politician in a corrupt system? That's pretty funny. But, I mean, the situation's not funny. As you heard, 60 people have been confirmed killed, some missing, some found dead. I mean, deleted. This is, it's crazy what's going on in Kenya. And the protests are going on because of bad governance and failed economic policies, just like in Nigeria. But Kenya was really the first launching point, and one of those huge, like Kenya is a huge country, and a huge component of East Africa, just like Nigeria is a huge component of West Africa and its economy and its trade and its markets and pretty much it's pretty much Nigeria and Kenya are like huge major arteries for Africa. If you want to like have a if you need like a visualization, Nigeria and Kenya are those countries that pump the most vital amount of blood into the country and is vital to its survival. And you see the clips. Rudo continues to just tell people don't protest and trust in me, even though I've continued to show you that I'm corrupt and I'm literally a puppet for the West and I have no care for your future or concern. That's all he's been displaying. So, and you hear the young sister say, I'm protesting for the people who have missed out on so many opportunities because of broken systems. Well, Rudo has failed to cultivate a relationship. There's that word again, a relationship, not only with his citizens, but with Gen Z. And he hasn't done anything. He hasn't created any uh, initiatives that have been prosperous or have thrived to help the younger generation, get out of squalor or get out of their destitute situation. And the thing is, he needs to realize that, the younger generation, they have a lot of time and they have social media. So we see what's going on and they see their future in jeopardy. So for you to think that they're not going to protest is kind of funny, because you are literally jeopardizing their future by continuing to listen to the West and continuing to be a puppet for the IMF and being beholden to their policies to get yourself out of a financial hole that you caused yourself by partaking in bad governance and following Western ideologies and Western governance and Western policies. It's all coming to a head now. As you heard, the people of Kenya see the disparity in the way they're living and how politicians are living. And, it's more out in the forefront. So there's no way to hide this anymore. Rudo could continue to, basically he's mobilizing the police to pretty much keep him in power and make it a dictatorship. He's not really doing anything to help alleviate any of the people's cries for help and for some type of safety net or relief. So this is what's going to continue to happen. And I believe here at Question Not Africa, we just help our brothers and sisters with the fallout by just giving them hope through cultural engagement. And cultural engagement is basically something that Rudo isn't doing, because he's listening to the West and getting advice from the West on how to govern his own country. So there isn't a surprise that there is a disconnect between him and the people. So here at Question Not Africa, we would want to create, again, relationship to understand what the Kenyan people need, what they want, what their needs are. From my understanding, it seems that they need some type of empowerment through education, so they don't have to again, excuse me. They need some type of empowerment and education and training, so they don't feel so reliant on the government. And I believe we could do this through training, through business initiatives, through training, through entrepreneurship, and also just education through teachers on how governments should be ran and how um, governance should work. I'm not even talking about like democracy or anything of the sort, because that's not applicable to them because they're not a Western nation. So we would just begin to just educate the people on different things like financial literacy, different initiatives to just create jobs or to create outlets where they could have their voice heard. Because, I mean, what's going on in Kenya is probably not going to get any better. It's going to get worse before it gets better. And I'm just thinking about the fallout of many of our people who have, as you heard, lost their lives, have been missing, kidnapped. There's a lot of corruption going on in Kenya. And it's our job, I believe, here in the Americas and the diaspora to empower our brothers and sisters, give them hope, and just give them knowledge of how governance is supposed to be on the most basic human level. We're not even talking about their political ideologies or things of that nature. We're just talking about what a nation should do for its citizens and their unalienable rights to the pursuit of happiness, and to protect their liberty and to protect their property. That's the most fundamental right that William Ruto has failed to achieve. Well, I'm going to let you all enjoy the rest of your weekend and your Friday. Shabbat Shalom. This has been the fourth installment of Exploring the Motherland African News with Garth. Thank you for tuning in, everyone. And just continue to share, like, and subscribe. And please donate to Quest Unite Africa. And please check out our channel. Please subscribe to our channel and check out our website. And I'm just going to leave this link here, and also all the links I've used for today's show will be in the description later, so you can look at it at your own discretion. And thank you, and Shabbat Shalom.